What's up, Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer, back for another edition of MVP Sports Live right here on, you're either watching it live here on twitch.tv/MVP vids, or you're watching it later on YouTube at MVP Sports. I am joined, like I always am, for our daily dive into the world of sports with my beautiful co-host, Dave Oster.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing today, Dave? Today, I know you said a little stressful. I hope that this kind of brings some light and some happiness, because I don't know about you, fourth day in, I have loved this week of MVP Sports Live. I love doing the shows.
Loving the show, loving the content. Can't wait for vacation to start tomorrow at about 6 o'clock at night. It's going to be great.
Well, before I do housekeeping and everything, I wanted to talk about this, but I didn't know where to fit it in. And with you being a White Sox fan, I wanted to get like your reaction to it. Did you hear today what was going around on Twitter about what Ozzie Guillen said about Nick Swisher?
Oh, yeah.
Where he was asked about it, and he's like, "Oh, I hate that man.
I just hate him."
He's like, they're like, "Well, no, you guys just didn't see eye to eye." He goes, "No, I hate him with everything in my heart." And basically called Nick Swisher fake and was like, "It's okay, I think he hates me too." To where it's like, I will say, I love Ozzie being on the Sox post games.
It's a mixed bag. Ozzie doesn't have a filter.
Ozzie being Ozzie.
But he doesn't always say smart things either. Mm-hmm. So, I love him as a former Sox and a former manager of the team, but he also has said some pretty inflammatory shit over the years. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason he's not in a professional team.
There's a reason why all of Miami hates him.
Yeah.
And probably will forever hate him. Fidel Castro comments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that and I was like, that's just typical Ozzie saying that he hates someone. But that year for the White Sox was a pretty good one. That was the 2008 year where you guys won the division. We won our division too. But we both lost in the first round. I looked that up today. But before we get into the show, we got a jam-packed one. 2 double opt-out deadlines, NFL and NBA draft we'll be talking about today. We've got a slew of NBA topics, as well as another top draft pick saying, "Nah, I ain't playing this year. I'm going to go get myself ready for the NFL draft." But before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping. Like I've said before, eventually these will be on podcast services. Just kind of continually to say that so I don't get updates and tweets and emails about when they will be on podcast services. That is still in development. And then really the only other housekeeping is check out, if you're a sports fan who likes gaming, check out MVP Entertainment as well. Get kind of a cross-contamination there, because it was brought to my mind that not everyone for MVP Sports who subscribed knows that we have the Gaming Entertainment channel, so we do have that. Check that out as well. Soapy and I did a reaction or a live watch-along to the State of Play that we'll be talking about on Games Live after Sports Live. And then pretty much the last thing for housekeeping is the traditional. If you're on Twitch, you can always watch the show on YouTube later on. If you're on YouTube watching this after the fact, twitch.tv/MVP vids, 4:30 Eastern is where we go live, or when we go live each and every day. But Dave, let's get into the show and what we're talking about today. And the first thing, the breaking news for today, the NFL opt-out deadline has passed. 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central was the last possible point to where NFL players could say, "I am not playing this season." We had some decisions where I know OBJ came out earlier this week and said, "I'm playing." He got some criticisms because I watched Stephen A. Smith kind of say the criticism of, how can you say we shouldn't play this year, but you're not going to opt out, but then you're going to say, oh, they're forcing us to play, but you're not going to opt out. That OBJ talking himself into a circle. Stephon Diggs was another one. People were like, is he going to play? Is he not? From CBS, or this is NFL.com I'm looking at, their article, the voluntary opt-outs we have. Andre Smith, DeAnthony Thomas of the Ravens, Star Latulippe and EJ Gaines from the Bills. We're going to have Devin Funchess of the Packers, Eddie Van Der Oos from the Texans, Let's see. Other big names. Alan Hearns of the Dolphins. The Patriots have a lot. Marquise Lee, Brandon Bolden, Donta Hightower, Dan Vitale. Marquise Goodwin of the Eagles is not playing. Travis Benjamin of the Niners are not playing. And then Anthony McKinney of the Titans are not playing as well. There's also unspecified opt-outs, like Eddie Goldman is on that list from the Chicago Bears. Yep. And also there's high-risk opt-outs as well, like Michael Pierce of my Minnesota Vikings. But the thing I just wanted to start out today, and I don't know if this is going to go super long like usual, but out of the opt-outs that we've seen and have here, do you think, like after seeing it, do you think the NFL season is going to be affected much, if there even is a season this year?
I mean, the list seems fairly small, to be honest with you. I expected more players to opt out, especially after seeing what happened in baseball right away. But, I mean, maybe more people adding to the opt-out post the opt-out deadline, where there's like, yep, nope, I'm taking the hit. Like, the whole point of the opt-out is so that they would get a loan on their year of contract. Basically, what happens is their contract is put on a freeze for this year. They get a loan towards the money that they would be guaranteed on next year. So basically, it goes $200,000. Okay. Or is that 150 up to 250, somewhere in that range, would be accessible to them this year, and then that would be taken out of whatever their next year's earnings would be. So, you know, it's just basically something to keep them going in the meantime. Now, if people decide that during the year, like, yeah, no, this ain't for me, I ain't risking it, say a couple people in the locker room get it, and then everybody else like, yep, never mind. I could see people dropping out after the fact and there being different financial issues that will arise then. But honestly, with the people that dropped outside of the Patriots, which is really interesting to see, because Donta Hightower, obviously a leader on that defense and a really high performer, but outside of a handful of players, pretty much as is expected, you know, it's everybody's going to stick with it. Everybody wants to see what's going to happen.
And the thing that I'm thinking about is the NFL players with this decision, because you're right, like players after this can say, nah, bro, I'm done. I ain't playing.
Correct.
This year. The only thing that this was to give them the credit of like, hey, I'm not going to be penalized for being opted out this year. But also I think it's for the league as well to kind of say, okay, where's our player? Where do they stand?
Testing the waters.
Yeah.
If it's a survey.
If the majority of players weren't going to play, then okay, that might impact our decision a little bit.
Absolutely.
For what we do. And even if it was like, if it was an overwhelming number, then okay, how are we going to add players if it got to that point? But for NFL players right now, I think it's a very tricky situation. Because obviously you want to play football. You love playing football. That's why you play the game and you love being in the NFL. But there's that side of it too of what are we going to see from the NFL if games are played? Like you mentioned, what's going on in MLB right now where they are status quo, and the last thing that came out was, all right, we're going to limit teams from 30 players to 28 players. It's like, oh, wow. 2 players per team is going to really keep the social distancing and make everyone healthy again. But then you see like the NHL and the NBA. NHL has been touting no positive cases. The NBA right now has been touting no positive cases. Yeah. So it's really, as an NFL player, you're almost like, I don't know what to expect unless you're just assuming like, oh, this is how Roger Goodell is going to handle this and how the owners are going to handle the season as a whole.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I do think that the success of the bubble leagues is definitely a big deal, and the NFL's looking at that, but there's just no easy way for them to replicate. Yeah. So, you know, they're going to go into it and try to, as far as anything on premise on their fields, locker rooms, training facilities, I'm sure they have put in line some guidelines. I don't know if they're going to cooperate at the state level or if they're going to say that, hey, our rules supersede the state level. If you're in the NFL, if you're part of this organization, we expect this of you, even if your state doesn't. That's kind of what I'm interested to see what happens with, because I know the teams down in Texas will have different rules than the teams in the Northeast. And I'm just very curious to see how that plays out, because I think that, even if coaches, do you put your players on, like, I don't want to say, like, remember when Des Bryant came in the league and they basically got him like 4 guys to just be bodyguards and be like, you're not going anywhere. You're going to practice and you're going home. And then nowhere in between.
Wasn't that Jerry Jones and the Cowboys that did that? Where it's like, basically you are babysitting Des Bryant. That's your job.
And they did a hell of a job, and Des Bryant turned out great. But like, it's one of those situations where it's like, can you trust all of your players to make smart decisions? It's a big staff. It's a big roster.
And it just takes one.
We're talking 100 people. So, and if one guy comes in sick, instantly, you could lose tons of guys. So, I don't know. I think training camps is going to be risky business. I think the prep for the start of the season, as soon as everybody's reporting in, it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be very interesting.
The other point, and I'm getting this from ESPN, an article written by Dan Graziano, that I think is an interesting takeaway from the opt-out list, is that the guys in the trenches are the most concerned, because out of the 66 players that were on the list, 22 of them, or 20 of them, so almost a third of your list, are either offensive tackles or defensive tackles. Yeah, so it was basically 10 offensive linemen, 10 defensive tackles, to where the guys that are basically like, so my main job is to put hands on the other guy and basically be face-to-face with him. It's no surprise that they would be the most concerned, but it's like...
But they're not. Think about the math. Like, there's 11 spots on the field. 5 of them are on the line. And yet only... I'm just saying.
Yeah, I wonder if it's one of those things where it's like, because to me, I think, how can you play football through this? Where it's like basketball.
Yeah, that's why they got the crazy masks, with the vent holes, basically.
Like, I think about it and I go, that should be something that speaks to the NFL of like, okay, 20 of the 66 are guys that are on the offensive or defensive line. Yeah.
40 which is aren't. More. And that's, that's what I'm saying. Like, as far as representation is concerned, 5 out of the 11 guys on the field versus,
Yeah. So. And but at the same time, the flip side of the guys that opted out, and of course this goes any position but those, it's like, okay, the free agents that aren't signed that still want to play, they can now get a shot to play this year. And the guys that opted out don't have to basically be hurt through it with the contract thing that you said.
No, but not hurt directly, but we could see long-term impacts to these guys because of their opt-out.
Yeah, where it's like they're not... I think it's, if you're going to opt out, it was better to do it before the deadline than kind of pussyfoot on it and say, nah, I'm going to do it after the deadline. But
if you're on a team where 12 guys get sick with the virus after week 1 of, playing,
that's a different story.
You're gonna be like, you're pussyfooting out right now? No, my team's got the fucking plague. I'm not going to go.
When I say that, though, I'm talking about the guys that, like, right now are like, should I play? Should I not play? Obviously, if it's like somebody on your team gets sick, obviously I'd be one of the first ones to say, fuck this, I ain't playing no more. Like, even if I was like gung-ho where it's like, I'm going to play, that's a different situation. That's like a special circumstance of like, obviously if someone gets sick on your team, I would expect players to be like, no, I'm not going to play. Kind of a thing.
And that's why I feel like it's all gonna domino down, you know?
It just, like I mentioned, it just takes one person to get sick before it's like, okay, now we've got to decide, do we play or do we cancel the season? But let's move NFL to NBA, and this one, NBA draft opt-out. This one happened Monday. We're talking about a couple days later. The NBA draft underclassmen withdrawal deadline was Monday night, and the list is there's a lot of underclassmen. The ones that I'm happy about, Ayo DeSumo and obviously Kofi Coburn coming back to Illinois. You add Petty Jr. He's coming back for a senior season at Alabama. Other guys like Luka Gaza, your boy, coming back to
Big boy.
Iowa. The thing that I want to ask you, Dave, is were there any names on the list of guys that are coming back that you're like, you're either bummed that they chose to go back, or you're like very excited that, hey, we're going to get to see another year of them develop, and then I'll get to talk about them in the draft, obviously, next year as well?
I mean, Pons from Tennessee is an interesting one. He's a guy who is touted as, you know, a defensive kind of wonder. He's like 6'6", but has a 7-foot wingspan. He plays great defense, you know, 3 through 5. He just doesn't have an offensive game yet. So I think he's someone who will really benefit from another year learning the game of basketball, working on his shot, and continuing to build up that draft stock. Because right now it looks like he was going to go maybe second round, maybe undrafted, but like one of those, like, if you're going to draft me 45 on, I don't even want to be drafted. Like, let me sign with my team of choice. Another guy was, I got to scroll now because I hate losing my place on this page. The one sharpshooting guard. Why can't I think of his name? You have the full list in front of you, and I hate you for tossing me on the spot to come up with the name.
No. But like, if you want to find it, I can talk about the thing I was going to bring up.
Yeah, give me like 5 seconds. Go for it.
Yeah. So like with me, of course, I'm going to bring it up because of Illinois, but I think like the biggest name on the list to me is Ayo DeSumo. Like, out of all the guys, I think that DeSumo was the only one that was a first round, like I don't want to say for sure first round, because like you had Tankathon him in the second, but like I think about it, like
you had several websites with him mocked in the second.
But like when I think about our coverage and what we were doing, like Sean had him in the first round, I had him in the first round, even if it was late first round. But like to me, he's the only one that was like, the only other guys are like Joel Ayayi, who's coming back to Gonzaga. He was one where it's like could be a first rounder towards the end. Petty Jr. was another one that kind of snuck in to my first round, depending on guards that were going to be there. But like I look at the list, and the thing that takes away from me, obviously this is always the case, of like there weren't a majority of players where it's like, wow, he would have been a first round talent. Why is he coming back? Except for maybe the 3 that I mentioned.
Yeah, Jared Butler was another one, just offensive kind of wizard out there. But no, there's a guard who I can't think of the name of.
Is it Isaiah Joe?
Yeah,
from
Isaiah
Arkansas?
Joe. Yeah.
Because that's another one I just, while scrolling, I'm like, he was in our first round too.
We had talked about him. Yeah. His stock kind of fell off this year. He was, initially in the mock around 15 to 25.
Yeah.
He had fallen off. He didn't have the best year. So I'm glad he's going back, because I think if he had come out this year, he would have been a second rounder. But I think another year in college, if he can get back on track, he's got the right offensive skill set to be a first round talent.
Yeah, and like I said, the only other names, like there are some where it's like, oh, they're transferring, like Justin Smith, who was at Indiana, he's gonna stay and go to Arkansas. You've got guys like Mac McClung, which everyone wanted to talk about, even though don't know if he would have even been a second rounder.
He wouldn't. I'll just say it out loud for all the haters. He wouldn't.
The thing I'm interested with him, though, is he's going from Georgetown to Texas Tech, and maybe Texas Tech will be a better situation for him than Georgetown.
I think it's
was.
the level of competition. He's looking for a higher level of competition. He was good at Georgetown, but he was put in a role as a primary ball handler. He didn't necessarily fit skill set wise. I think he's better as an off ball kind of guy. Who has some ability to handle, but like being a primary point guard is not built into his brain. Yeah. He does not thrive in that role.
And that's otherwise, to me, there's not many names that jump off the page. It was just kind of like, except for, I would say the 2 biggest to me, there's 4 big ones. There's Isaiah Joe, Petty Jr., Ayo, and then Luka Garza.
I think Pons is up there, because I know there were a couple teams targeting him in the second. But yeah, I wonder, you're opting out to go back to college. who says there's going to be college this year?
Yes.
Like, that's my question is, what do you do if you're one of these guys and your whole thought is, I'm going to go back and improve my stock? If we don't play basketball this year in college, we have a new class of freshmen who we have high school tape on where everyone is so dominant in high school, and we don't get to see anything on them for a full year, which means we have higher hopes and expectations on those guys than we do on the guys we haven't seen play in college who maybe struggle a little bit or didn't live up to, where they were aiming at. So I think it's going to create an interesting draft situation. If we don't have college basketball this year, it's kind of like that class and a half kind of situation. It's not the double class like we were expecting the straight out of high school, but we will have something similar in the fact that we have a slightly larger than expected returning group who hasn't had a chance to prove themselves better, and a young group of super potential stars. And we've talked about the next year's class. It's got a lot of talent. Got a lot of talent at the top of that draft class.
And I just mean, that's the risk you're kind of playing with, because I think that in the NFL and the NBA, this year is going to be the very different styles of draft than we've seen. Because like in the NFL, there's going to be guys where we don't have tape from this past year. Like mainly all we're going to get is workout footage from the guys who are going ahead to do it. And one of them that is opted out, I hate my tablet right now because it keeps wanting to send me to the ESPN app, and I'm like, no, I don't want to go to ESPN's app. I want to do Google Chrome. But basically, Penn State lineman Micah Parsons has said today he was a top 10 pick in the early mock drafts. Now he basically said today, nah, I'm out. I'm opting out, and it's not an I'm opting out and coming back. It's an I'm opting out and I'm going to work on my draft. So what I asked you, what was it, yesterday we talked about this? Where I'm like, will there be any more players? And I brought up Trevor Lawrence because he's like at the top. Boom, we get a top 10 pick now in Micah Parsons, linebacker, who's basically saying, nope, I'm going to go work on my draft stuff.
I wonder if we're going to have like an additional compensational round in the draft because of that. I know the NFL is more likely to do this than the NBA, but even the NBA might consider like an extension on the draft or something along those lines, because it's just like, hey, if there's no games to be played, it's kind of a different situation with something we've never experienced before.
I think the NBA would be, to me in my head, the NBA would be the smarter decision for that. Only because of COVID, the NFL, it's not like the NFL is gaining additional players to the draft. It's kind of just I don't have game footage from them. But with the NBA, that's tricky.
You still have the next class up kind of coming in. That's what I'm saying, like.
Kind of.
Oh, but they did already have their draft.
Yeah, they had their draft already. So that is different. You're right. Yeah. Where the NBA, these are guys.
I forgot Goodell eating his fucking M&Ms in his basement.
Yeah, where these guys.
M&Ms or Skittles?
M&Ms. They're M&Ms.
Yeah, I thought so.
For the NBA, these guys are opting out that probably would have came out this year if it wasn't for the whole situation of what was going on. Because let's be honest, if COVID didn't happen, this deadline would have been in June or... Yeah, would have been like May, early June. Would have had the combine as well, which got canceled because of this, and the tournament, like you mentioned. Whereas I would not be surprised if the NBA next year said, "Look, we're going to give you 3 rounds."
Hell yeah, that'd be so cool.
Only because we might have more players in this draft than we've had in future years or past years.
That'd be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. I mean, the one other thing is obviously when we do get that one and done rule in place, and I think now the target date might be 2022. 4?
Oh, okay.
Because it's whenever the CBA is back up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know off the top of my head when it is up.
Yeah, I was reading about it the other day, but yeah, either way, like we got a couple of years before that happens. That's the only time I could see them adding another class, like another round to the draft, but it'd be very interesting to see how they handle it, but it's the NBA. They've got the right man in charge. They're going to handle it well one way or the other. I got faith.
Dave, you got to say it. You say the right man in charge. Why is he the right man in charge? Because he's the
best commish.
He's the best commish. That's what I was waiting for. He was the best commish in all of sports.
Of American sports. I don't know worldwide. I'm not proclaiming America.
Don't know the football commissioners. Yeah. Not soccer, the football.
Can't speak on that.
Commissioners. The other thing before we go into basketball, because basketball is going to be a big part of the show today. The other kind of breaking news-ish that we got today is that US Today revealed their Amway coaches poll. And to no surprise, Clemson is number one. The complete list, and I'll read all the 25 teams now. Clemson's at 1, Ohio State's at 2, Justin Fields coming back as their quarterback. Bama is at 3, post Tua Tagovailoa era there. Georgia's 4, LSU is 5, so 3 straight SEC teams. Oklahoma's at 6, Penn State's at 7, Florida 8, Oregon 9, Notre Dame is 10th, Auburn 11, Wisconsin 12th, Texas A&M at 13, Texas at 14, Michigan 15, Oklahoma State at 16, USC, Minnesota, North Carolina are 17, 18, 19, and then the last 5 are Utah, UCF, Central Florida getting in there at 21, Cincy, Iowa, Virginia Tech, and then Iowa State at 25. So
any shockers there from you?
For me, the big one is like UCF at 21. I know they're usually in the rankings, but like maybe could this be the year they kind of move up higher in those rankings? Because they've got the Boise State they've got the Boise State syndrome. Like you ask what their schedule is, it don't matter. It ain't a D1 schedule. Like that's the thing. To me, the interesting thing is Ohio State at 2. Where is this going to be fuel for the fire for Alabama? Or Nick Saban will say, well, we're never going to use, like, I don't know if he's using his bulletin board material for his team or if he's going to come out and say we just tackle every game, like the cliches that the athletes always say. North Carolina too at 19. I did not expect them to be as high as they were because they have, I know that they're in the second year of the Mac Brown era over there, but I didn't expect them to be
Brown, great interview, 19. By the way.
Yeah.
Listen to a interview of his
recently.
Yeah. He did of course the only show I've been listening to be honest.
The Pat McAfee show
is the Pat McAfee show, kicking piss missiles to the sky. I love that line is just fantastic.
Did you say kicking piss missiles to the sky?
Yeah. You never listened to the McAfee and Hawk theme song?
I've never listened to the McAfee and Hawk theme song.
So yeah, there's a McAfee show in the morning, then you get the McAfee and Hawk some days of the week.
Oh, okay.
By the way, congratulations, Pat. I know you're listening. He just got married this past weekend.
Okay.
So shout out.
Yeah, and and good luck on your match with Adam Cole that we know is upcoming with Adam Cole outraging on your show. But Dave, the rest of the show, easy show.
Wheelhouse,
it's all basketball, and we're gonna start the basketball stuff off with a daily segment here on MVP. These are the dampest of dudes, the soggiest of shooters, the moistest of men. This is Wet Boys, our daily segment where we give love to players from the NBA, MLB, the NHL, WNBA, all over. Even the UFC, any sports that I did not mention, NFL.
Yeah,
when that
we
comes,
might see some UFC Wet Boys coming soon.
We might. But how we do it is Dave has one, I have one, and then our patrons at patreon.com/MVP vids, they get to vote for theirs. Anyone from the silver, gold, and platinum tier. So go to patreon.com/MVP vids. I also got to give a throw out to JD, who's usually in our Twitch chat because he heard about that. I'm assuming he heard me talk about it for a couple days. He upgraded his pledge so that he can interact with the show and vote for his Wet Boy each and every day. But Dave, we will start with you as we always do. Who's your Wet Boy for August 6th, 2020?
Yep. On this wonderful day, I got to give the love and respect to Chris Paul, CP3, the ageless wonder out there. Honestly, when it comes to the Oklahoma City Thunder this year, Vegas was so down on them. Most people were so down on them. I was one of those guys who's like, but guys, they don't trade anybody. like they're going to be a playoff team. And I remember distinctly Ricky and Sean being like, there's no way they don't unload this roster. This roster's getting flipped over by January. Like there's no way that Steven Adams, Gallo, CP3 are all going to be on that team after the trade deadline.
You'd be right.
And just all this vitriol coming out of their mouths, talking so bad. And instead we have Chris Paul leading this Oklahoma City Thunder team into the playoffs, not only into the playoffs, but doing it well. He's been healthy all year. He's been an elder statesman in the league. He has been a great mentor to a young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And he went out there and he popped off against the Lakers and honestly embarrassed them a little bit. That game was an embarrassment.
And I think he hurt LeBron's ego because LeBron is going to miss the next game with some groin tightness. So I think the groin tightness is a little bit of a little hurt ego because Chris Paul showed him up. And the Thunder won. That's me throwing a joke. To believe
that, but also it's they're only back to back before the playoffs. Yeah. So why play them?
I mean, that's the logical answer.
They've got first place locked in, and they don't have to play them.
That's the logical answer, but why be logical?
Exactly. So shout out to Chris Paul, my man, just doing all the little things, calling all the plays out on the court, just killing it.
So for my wet boy today, we're gonna play a special game. And I have been, ever since yesterday when I picked my wet boy, I have been so excited and could not wait to reveal this wet boy to the world. Okay. And I threw out on Twitter, this is what I threw out. This was the image I threw out. It was a wet boy card. You see the stats right there. 25 points per game, or 25 points in the game, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 69% from the field. Nice. And 100% from beyond the arc. And I threw out on Twitter, who could this wet boy be? And got a couple guesses. One of the big ones was from our boy John, J-Dub, who threw out TJ Warren. It is not TJ Warren. I got another guess or another kind of like, well, I know it's not Michael Porter Jr. I know it's not Devin Booker, but before we, and I'm going to leave the card up here because this is going to require Dave a little bit of a story about this player. So this player their team has played, I think, 5 games since their season has started, and it has not been that good of a season for this player, where they've been on the bench most of the year, and this is how their games have gone. I've listed this off to Soapy. He's the only one that knows who this wet boy is. And the first game, they played 1 minute, 0 points, -4. Not a good game. Yeah. The second game, their team lost 90-66. They played 7 minutes off the bench, 2 points. Then you had the third game. Were they off the bench this game too? They were. They had 8 minutes, 1 shot, 0 points. And then they had the game before yesterday's where they got the start. No, they played more minutes, 23 minutes, 8 points, but went 100% from the field. So not a great performance for this player. However, yesterday they popped off. And Dave, I am happy to announce that I have hoodwinked you all. And it is not a wet boy I am giving this award to. We have our first Misty Miss on the show. Bridget Carlson, Minnesota Lynx, popped off. Had some mediocre games off the bench. Gets the start. Her first start of the season. Pops off for 25 points, 7 boards, 69% from the field, and 100% from beyond the arc. Our first WNBA player to get the award.
I was going to say, I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah. I didn't know we could do that.
I mentioned it yesterday. So I mentioned it yesterday, like as a passing, like could be a WNBA player. And it was kind of like, I don't know if it's going to happen. But then I don't know why I saw it and why I looked at it. But I was like, there's a little bit of research here. And so I'm like, I'm going to give it. I also talked to soapy about this. And I was like, well, she wouldn't be a wet boy then because obviously she's not a guy. And after kind of workshopping everything, I think either Misty Miss or Misty Misses, depending on if they're married or not, is how we would have to go with this one. So had to give a tip of the hat for Bridget Carlton, who wanted to give some love to our first WNBA Misty Miss Wet Boy Award winner.
Awesome.
And then the patron wet boy. This is the one that Soapy told me. He goes, if this guy doesn't get a wet boy, I am protesting. MPJ Michael Porter Jr., third wet boy of the year, second one of the restart. Guy's been popping off. Dude's been popping off.
Turns out he's a good offensive player. You know, the kid who was the number 1 ranked player in his class.
Like he shouldn't have been
All-American.
Like he shouldn't have been the first overall pick.
He shouldn't have been the first overall pick. But he should have been taken higher than he was.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is just year 2 of his career.
Yeah.
And we will see what happens. If his back doesn't have any more issues, if he can stay healthy, great. But people don't do a victory lap after year 2 and 4 games in. Yeah, that's just me. Except for the fact that Bull, I'm just taking all the credit for the fact that I called that out. And I saw 3 practice games. They didn't even count. I saw practice games. I'm like, that's legit. You guys can go home. I wrote it up.
Saw him in the airport and said, he's legit. Y'all can go home. But yeah, and the Nuggets we're going to talk about in a little later as well. But 30 and 15, you get the nod as a wet boy for today. But Dave, we've got 4 NBA topics we're going to talk about in the show. The first one's kind of a small one, and it's our 3rd injury topic since the NBA restart happened. First one was Jonathan Isaac. The next one was Jaren Jackson Jr. that we talked about yesterday. And today, it looks like Ben Simmons' season might be over as he's got a partially dislocated knee, which is not the news you wanted to hear if you are the 76ers, because as I talked about on, I think it was the show 2 days ago, fans of the 76ers should already be worried about their team, and this would be a bigger blow to that Philly team.
Yeah, Shams dropping the official diagnosis for Ben Simmons is a subluxation of the left patella. Listed out, treatment options being considered, but let's be honest, he's out for at least the remainder of the regular season. It just depends on how much of the playoffs he's also going to miss.
Do you think he's going to miss the
Aaron
playoffs?
Gordon's out with a hammy. I'm just dropping that one.
Yeah.
Because more injury news has to happen. Do I think he misses some of the playoffs? Yes. I think he'll try to make it back for playoffs, though. I think it just depends on how bad it is. I've never had a dislocated kneecap. I mean, that doesn't sound good at all, but the fact that he walked off under his own power, it's just a question of, flexibility, the strength, the confidence in his own leg. A lot's going to go into that. So it's terrible news for the 76ers. I mean, they were already a team that was flirting with disaster going into the playoffs with some really lackadaisical effort games going on. I'm curious to see what their lineup will look like. Will Al Horford return to the starting lineup? Will they go small and run Toby at the 4 and bring out another guard or a small wing to go there? Like, what are they going to do? It's going to be interesting. And we're going to see an increased load on Joel Embiid, which I know Joel sometimes can live up to the biggest of moments, but he's also crumbled when it counts most. So it's going to be very telling what happens these playoffs. I just hope, of all things, it's not an excuse for a certain coach to keep his job when they lose.
If Brett Brown keeps his job after this season ends in the first round, I will be mad for Sixer fans. Sixer fans won't have to be mad because I will already be protesting the decision by, like, that'll turn from fire Brett Brown to fire Elton Brand. If fire Elton Brand isn't even a thing yet, which it probably is with Sixer fans, but do
we reach out to our homeboy Jake for a local reaction?
I think we have to. One of these days we have to have him on to give his take for the 76ers.
I just want a reaction from him. Let's get a quote from him on Discord. Let's get something.
That's what we need. So that's
do you stalk out his Twitter? I know Sean used to.
I have been. It's been a lot of Yankees tweets.
So he's already made
Yanks tweets.
He's ignoring basketball.
A lot of Talkman mania going on from Jake when
Smart
it comes
move.
to Twitter. But, I mean, I'm looking right now. End of the regular season is a week from tomorrow. I mean, if I'm the 76ers, I think the rest of the regular season is a for sure no-go, obviously. But, like, if you're not playing well in these few games, I would almost be to the point. No, Brett Brown wouldn't say this because his job's on the line or should be on the line. But if I'm Ben Simmons, I kind of look at it as like, you know what? My future health for this team is better to be healthy in the long run. And if I don't see this team making any damage in the postseason, why should I risk re-injury?
You don't say it like that.
That's what I'm thinking in my head, though, not publicly coming out and saying that, but that's kind of what I'm thinking of. Like, let me get right because we could win chips down the line.
Long-term deal. Mm-hmm. He's already signed to a max extension, I believe. So if I'm the 76ers, I'm playing it as if you're not 100%,
then you're not playing
on the bench. Mm-hmm. We don't need you out here right now. Yeah. They put themselves in a horrible spot contract-wise, but it doesn't get easier next year. So why risk a long-term injury? Because we talked about how injuries this year will lead into the start of the next season, which is just a couple months away, we assume. So don't end up missing this playoffs and all of next year because you're trying to push too hard to come back from something that you're not comfortable with maybe. But if he claims he's 100% and the doctors claim he's 100%, I have no problem with him coming back for the playoffs, but it's just I don't have a barometer for where this injury will land him. At this point, we understand the most common injuries in the NBA and kind of what it takes to come back from them. We've seen enough instances of them in the last couple of years to have a good gauge. I just can't recall a dislocated kneecap.
Yeah.
It's just not one of those common things.
And obviously, like you said, if he's 100%, he should play. But let's segue into the three big topics we had. The first one, we're talking about our boys again, Dave, the Chicago Bulls, which we had some comments in the in the YouTube comment section. The first one was, hey, are we going to get draft content again? We will have draft content on the channel. That's not going anywhere. Stay tuned for that. And then the second one, after I said, yes, we'll have draft content, is, hey, are we going to still have our Chicago love? And it's not going to be a Chicago straight show, but when there's news, we're going to report on it or kind of talk about it. And this one is some sad, upsetting news, as it always is for the Chicago Bulls right now.
Oh, rumored.
Rumored, but the Chicago Tribune has an article, this one written by Joe Colley, that says...
Yeah, Colley notoriously is someone who is... I don't want to say backed by the front office.
Oh, okay.
But he has his ins and he plays nice with them. Yeah. So take that for what it's worth.
He doesn't piss anyone off, doesn't burn any bridges. But he wrote, financial concerns will keep Jim Boylen as Bulls head coach. And the article says, according to several sources, there is a strong growing momentum that financial concerns the Reinsdorfs have about the 2021 season will keep Boylen in his current seat, as well as most of the coaching staff. So that player-first motto that Kornisovas and general manager Mark Eversley were touting several months ago, well, money just pushed it aside and cut in the front of the line. And Dave, to me, I'm furious by hearing this because there's a part of me that's the businessman that realizes that, like, of course, Reinsdorf doesn't need to lose or doesn't want to lose money. I get that. But there's a sense in business sometimes where there's the phrase, cut your fucking losses. And I added the colorful language.
I would say, really, that's a phrase now.
Basically, cut your losses. And that's what the Bulls need to do. They need to take this. They need to say, hey, you know what, Kornisovas, Mark Eversley, do what you want. If Jim Boylen's the guy, keep him. If he's not the guy, get rid of him. And if it's getting rid of him and losing that money, you're cutting your losses now because the guys you hired are going to put a better team together, or you hope they're going to put a better team together that's going to fill that stadium and make you money in return. lose now, make money later. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, I don't know that I 100% believe this article. I understand that in the past, the Reinsdorfs have been notoriously tight with their money, and it can be very frustrating, but we've seen the influence of the younger generation of Reinsdorfs. And I think that there is more of a push to make things happen. Plus, I saw a hilarious tweet out there that was like, what, the $3.5 million we got for Jordan Bell was enough? What, the money that we got from Carmelo Anthony wasn't enough? Like,
no, they don't want the White Sox.
We literally absorbed money, and then we still couldn't have what we wanted. So I'm with Sam in the comment section in Twitch right now. We're hoping the Raptors finish their playoff run so we can get an interview with Adrian Griffin. I think he is by far the best candidate outside of Atkins. And I want to know, I just want to know that that's the plan. And I know they're not going to let us know that. Yeah. So I think this is just speculation because nothing's happened yet. So the Knicks got their head coach. How come we didn't? Well, there's someone that we want that isn't available is one line of thought. And that would make sense in this case. Yeah.
And I wonder, the Atkins thing is the big thing I've wondered about because for me, that's been the guy that I've kind of looked at.
I always confuse Atkins at Diet and Atkinson.
Yeah. Atkinson. He's the one I've always wondered that I've always gone, he's out there. What's wrong with him? What does Karnisovas not like about him or Eversley not like about him? Or is it they want to wait for Griffin before they because like there hasn't even been news of an interview with Atkinson. And I kind of feel like what you're saying with they want to keep everything close to the chest, but if he got an interview, we would have heard about it, right? Like Kenny wouldn't have gotten an interview and then they would have kept it so soft to where no one knew it happened. Like, no, that's not a possibility, right?
I don't believe so. I don't think there's a situation where they get to the point where we're doing interviews behind closed doors and no one in the public knows about it. It's one of those things where it's very obvious when things are going on. And yeah, I don't have that kind of faith. Although I get it, new top of the top of the billing as far as our management's concerned, but still Reinsdorf production,
Yeah, and it's his money that's on the line. So I get if he's like, hey, I invested a lot in this guy, but like if that's the battle you're playing right now, and I'm talking about Karnisovas, basically saying Karnisovas. I'll go back to calling him carnivorous. That's what I used to call him. But it sounds like to me, the game they're playing is he's like, hey, let me do my job. Reinsdorf says, no, I don't want to lose money. So like if I'm Karnisovas, Karnisovas, right?
Close enough. I fucking give up.
Like, I'll say it as slow as you want me to. You're basically handcuffed to where it's like, so you're not going to let me do my job. Because, like, I saw a tweet today from, his name is @BullsKingdom. Yeah. Love him, Bull Scripted are two of my main ones where he even put a tweet out today that said, I totally understand if you want to leave, @Zach Levine, @Laurie Markkinen. Because, like... The players don't like Jim Boylen. The fans don't like Jim Boylen. Why keep him?
The record doesn't like Jim Boylen. Yeah.
The I scored 40 points doesn't like Jim Boylen. That I don't get it. I don't get it. I hope this is wrong. I hope we get rid of Boylen. I hope we're right. And that the Raptors, once they end their run, will get some interviews going because that's been the most frustrating thing is we have heard nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it would be different. It's like, oh, well, we interviewed this guy and we looked at this guy to where it's like, since we got GM and basketball player ops, it's been quiet on the Bulls front. And that's what infuriates me as a fan. I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we move on.
Just want to tell Soapy to shut his fucking mouth.
What's he saying?
Saying he's staying. Just accept it.
Oh, just accept it. Just like he's gonna have to accept J. Cole being a new member of the Pistons.
I mean, they're also gonna lose his boy down on the low post. Who's gonna sign with the Knicks?
Oh yeah, his Christian Woods. Luke Kennard will also leave. Also, but we're gonna move on. This one would usually come out of Wet Boys because we talked about them in Wet Boys. One of their players, but the Bulls news, I didn't want to put it at the end of the show. But we're going to highlight the Nuggets today on the show. Nuggets and Celtics are the two teams we're going to highlight. They both played yesterday. Nuggets had the last two games have been big wins for them, beating the Spurs last night. They have Portland coming up tonight. They've got the back-to-back Wednesday into Thursday. And the question I want to ask you, Dave, is out of all the West teams we've talked about the bottom of the West. That's basically who's fighting for the 8th seed. We've talked about the top of the West when it comes to like the Clippers, and even we've mentioned the Lakers a little bit. Are people sleeping on the Nuggets, and are they going to be the true dark horse when it comes to the Western Conference?
I mean, I don't know about dark horse.
Like, could they be the one?
They're about to be the number 2 seed in the West again.
Okay.
I mean, they won a lot of games last year in the regular season, and then we all know what happened to them in the playoffs. So I think dark horse, no. I think if you're talking dark horses, everybody wants to look at like Dallas or the Rockets, somewhere at the very bottom of the playoff picture. But when you look at what the Nuggets have done, they're a very good regular season team. They've got good depth on their wings. I mean, their problem has always just been they need that second guy who is reliable, who can score at will. Jamal Murray, as talented as he is not that guy. He's a great third option. He's an above average third option. But obviously Jokic now having MPJ out there knocking down shots is awesome. But Michael Porter Jr. doesn't exactly have a whole lot of basketball experience under him in the last 2 years. So I don't know if he's someone you can count on in the playoffs.
Because is this MPJ going to show up in the playoffs? You never know.
Exactly. How's he going to face up with AD, when it comes down to it and it's playoff minutes? How's LeBron, if you get faced up against LeBron, good luck. That boy is strong, but no. So like, I love the idea of the Nuggets being a very strong playoff team. They have great depth. What makes them special is that nobody else plays the way they do. They play inside out from Jokic. Ball handling center is so unique in today's NBA. He's one of the few centers who is absolutely worth, max contract, long-term everything with him. But I just don't know that they have the firepower and matchups when it comes down to it. When you look at the other teams in the West, there's a lot of teams they've struggled against too. I mean, they have a great record, but you beat a lot of bad teams in the regular season.
And I'm going to take that point and run with it. Not just beat a lot of bad teams in the regular season, even look at the restart. Out of their 2 wins, the Thunder are a team that is a much lower seed than them. And the Spurs are a team that's a much lower seed than them. You look at the Miami Heat, a team they played to start the restart games against, they lose that game. And I would say the Miami Heat are a tougher opponent than the Thunder or the Spurs. And that's why I think like tonight's game against Portland is going to be a big, it's going to change the meter for me a little bit, because this is the first of some of the play. Like they've got Portland, Utah, LA, Toronto to end their season. Not the easiest of stretch. I would say probably the easiest game, and easiest being in quotes because they're still a good team, would be Utah. But that just depends on what Conley and what Gobert and what Donovan Mitchell, I almost said Devin Mitchell, Donovan Mitchell, am I going to see, because some of those guys have even been wishy-washy when it comes to their performances.
Again, the Spurs, as good as they looked, are not a playoff team. The Trailblazers are not a playoff team as of today. Yeah, it's like their wins have been against teams that aren't going to be in the playoffs. It's they might edge in, they might make their way in, but
put some respect on it, Dave. Play-in tournament opponents.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
because they're gonna make the tournament, Dave.
When you're like, oh yeah, if they can look good against Portland, and I'm like, Portland's not even a playoff team.
Yeah,
like, they're not even the. And I understand.
Maybe I look at it because
we're
think
putting Portland
get
here because the fact that we know how good Nurkic, Zach Collins, and additions have been to this team post restart, and we're like, if they had them all year, I think Portland would probably be a top 4 team in the West. But that you got to understand they're not. So You can't treat this game like it's the Nuggets proclaiming themselves king of the hill. And I don't think that any games really until the playoffs start will do that for me. I think a lot of teams, like we said, the Lakers have hit cruise control. The Clippers have hit cruise control. They are not out to prove anything. And those are the two teams at the very top. I think the only matchup that's really going to be interesting for me for this Nuggets team is, do they have a game against the Rockets?
No, Raptors.
Okay, so yeah,
Blazers, Jazz, and then LA, and then Toronto.
Yeah, it's the Raptors is definitely the only telling thing there. And even that one may or may not mean something because I don't know what their plans are. They're kind of locked in where they're at in second place. So I don't know if they're going to face true playoff competition until the playoffs start. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Plus, like we mentioned before, a 7-game series is different than just
when you can game plan
in the bubble
for people and your game times are standardized, because right now guys are getting up, their practice time versus their game time changes every single day. They're in like the routine is non-existent. So give people a week of, hey, I'm going to be playing, my practice is this time slot, my game time is this time slot. I'm in a routine, I'm in a rhythm. Shooters are going to start getting more dialed in. The scores in these games are going to be outrageous because, as you know, the Nuggets are not exactly the most staunchest of defenses, but the 130 to 125s is the new normal in the bubble, I think, for them.
And the last thing I'll throw out, just a quick thing, is I think that Clipper game, the Clipper Nugget game, is going to be the only game that the Clippers kind of be like, all right, we've been on cruise control the other ones. We got to bring our stuff for this one, because right now the Nuggets are a half game behind the Clippers. And if I'm either of the two, Denver or LA, I'd rather be in that second seed, because I'd rather see Dallas in the first round than the Houston Rockets. And right now it'd be
what
Denver,
if Houston wins or loses? I mean, you got to think 4 through 7 is literally 2 games.
You're right. Oklahoma and the Rockets are tied. It's a half game. They're both behind the Jazz. I mean, and that one's a while away.
The Mavs are 41 wins. So you literally go 4 to 7 in a heartbeat.
That game, the Clipper game, there's, I think, for the Nuggets, 3 games: Portland, Utah, and the Lakers before that one. So like, we're going to have to see what the standings are like there. But like, if they are what they're based on now, I would rather see Dallas than Houston if I'm choosing between those teams.
I would agree with you. I would be scared of Houston. I think most teams should be. But the Clippers are a team where, again, are they going to be fully staffed? We talked about it yesterday. They're still missing out on 2 key pieces. So I think it's just a waiting game. You know, it's sad to say that, like, I'm not saying teams aren't going all out to win a game, but I'm saying there's a difference between playoff, drive and what is a regular season game that amounts to nothing for them, because there is no home court advantage. There is no, we'll have the advantage in Game 7 if it makes it that far. No, you're playing on a neutral court. None of this matters. It's just what path would you like to take, and all of that is even kind of a jumble right now because again, it's so close in the West.
The other team I said we're going to mention, and we'll end the show with them, is the Boston Celtics. They're a team that, since the restart, they lost to Milwaukee, they beat Portland, lost to Miami, and then won against Brooklyn last night. They have 4 games left: Toronto, Orlando, Memphis, and Washington to end the way. So Friday's game, tomorrow's game against the Raptors is pretty much their only tough game the rest of the way. Like, Washington may play them close, but Washington, like you mentioned yesterday, usually plays teams close and then doesn't finish. Orlando they're pretty much, they've got their spot solidified. They haven't been playing well, though, since the Jonathan Isaac injury as well.
That's hurt too much. And Vucevic,
now, I think Vucevic, you mentioned Aaron Gordon now.
Aaron Gordon, hamstring. I think Vucevic is actually okay. I think it was Aaron Gordon. I got mixed up. But the chance that we might see some more Mo Bamba out there.
Yeah, and then the Grizzlies, we've talked about them enough and their woes. Bubble.
It's a shame, but it's kind of to be expected with the start-stop of the season and the intensity ratcheting up so quickly.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to ask you, though, with the Celtics is what I kind of saw when just Googling the Boston Celtics is
the fact they spanked the Nets.
no, not that they spanked the Nets. That
They
basically
did.
the question that Boston is asking is how far can Tatum and Brown lead these Celtics? Because like there's articles that are out there that's like this team will go only as far as those two will lead them. How far will that be? Could the Celtics be a team like we mentioned with the Raptors where it's like, if I'm Milwaukee, I don't want to play the Celtics because they're playing some good basketball. What are your thoughts on the Celtics and their last four and how far they could go this year?
I mean, Chris Middleton from Milwaukee sort of had the number of the Celtics. He's basically the fucking boogeyman to them after their series a couple years ago. By the way, the Bucks just dumpstered the Heat in the third and fourth quarter.
After we mentioned that Giannis was in foul trouble.
He was in foul trouble early. They were down by like 20 in the first half. But yeah, they came back and just dumpstered them in the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So credit due there. We'll talk about that game tomorrow. I guarantee it. But no, I think that the I don't know if I'd be afraid of playing the Celtics. The Celtics are a very good team because they have just wing depth. They have, obviously you mentioned Jaylen Brown, who's been playing amazingly well. Jason Tatum gets a lot of the headlines, but Jaylen Brown has just been nothing shy of a lead out there. Gordon Hayward, he's returning to form. He's so versatile on the wing. He's able to make the smart passes. He's able to move the ball. Marcus Smart out there doing the right thing, just playing really good defense. Like they've got good depth out there. Their defense is above average. I mean, their only weakness is the same thing as always has been. It's just they don't have that rim protector to stay on the court at all times. They kind of rotate through, Daniel Tice. Time Lord got some minutes and looked good today, but he's not somebody who's going to pop off on the regular. He's someone who gets benched because he looks lost out there at times. That's the reality of what it is. I love the team. I love the talent. I love the youth of it, but if I'm the Bucks, I'm not afraid of anybody outside of the Raptors. Yeah, that is even the Heat. Actually, the Heat are another matchup where, honestly, today was kind of a surprise. But I think the Heat are another team that matched up really well against them. I think the Celtics, though, they've earned the right to be a top team in the East. It's just I don't know that they're going to be able to compete for an Eastern Conference championship.
And kind of what I'm thinking the same thing. Like if I'm afraid of the Raptors more than I am the Celtics as well. But the thing that I can't stop thinking about with the Celtics is basically they're, in my mind, I'm not saying them on the court, I'm saying like my interest in their games. They're on cruise control excitement-wise until the second round of the playoffs because the rest of their regular season I'm not very excited for. I mean, the Raptor game on Friday, like I said, will be a good one. That'll be kind of a little taste test of what we could see in the playoffs. But like right now, the way that the 76ers are without Ben Simmons the rest of the way, I think they will stay at the 6th seed, even though they're a half a game behind the Indiana Pacers, who looks like TJ Warren cooled down a little bit against the Phoenix Suns. And I feel like the Celtics the rest of the way is going to be, after that Raptor game, just cruise control. That first series isn't going to be hard because I don't think the 76ers are going to give them a whole lot of trouble. And then it just becomes, okay,
especially now.
We're just waiting for them to play the Raptors in the second round because I don't expect, right now Brooklyn jumped the Orlando Magic. Maybe Brooklyn surprises the Raptors, but like I don't expect that. I expect to see Raptors Celtics when we get to the second round of the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, the one thing that we haven't mentioned is Kemba Walker, obviously missing a couple games due to his knee. I don't think it's anything serious. That's why I didn't talk about it to begin with.
But if he misses any time, this team is different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're obviously worse when he is out. I do wonder if he's going to be under any minutes restriction or whatever come playoff time. But I still think that they're I don't say they're the same team, but I have the same expectations. I think that they can win the first round of the playoffs, and that second round will be a shootout. And it's just I haven't seen Jason Tatum topple, a team. Tatum was excellent his rookie year. He's gotten better and he continues to get better, but it's kind of one of those like, until you prove it, I don't know that I put my trust in you. It's like Giannis. Like we knew Giannis was good, but it was like, well, he hasn't won one. He hasn't won the Eastern Conference even. He hasn't beaten everybody in front of him yet. And I think this could be Tatum's year to do that. Like if Tatum came out and made a statement in a series and just was absolutely down and dropping like 30 a night, 38-3 or 38-4, something like that. I think that he could take them to an Eastern Conference Finals. Mm-hmm. If he wins that, then it's like, this is a nightmare for people because you look at Boston, you're like, great, they got a genius head coach. Their front office is just absolutely like, don't trade this man ever. You will just lose said trades. Mm-hmm. And they've got about 1 billion draft picks to go through. Yeah. So they're set for the long term anyway, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with this playoff run. I think that there's a lot riding on it, and I think it'll make some decisions on them going forward, depending on how far they make it, if they're going to move some of these pieces they've got in their draft capital, chest, whatever you want to call it, their war chest.
Mm-hmm. And I'm the same way, and I'll just end it with I can't wait till tomorrow to see how that Raptors-Celtics game go. Because obviously we said that the playoffs are different, but that's going to be just like I said.
You get a little preview.
That little preview, that taste test of what we could see when we get to the playoffs for the Celtics. Yeah. But before we end the show, what I always do, or what I started doing the last few days, Dave, is we got to come up for a catchy name for this, because it's kind of like your little basketball, and maybe it's Dave's Corner to end the show. Any game or team from yesterday's action we didn't mention that you want to throw some love to?
I mean, out of yesterday's games, 6 games, I talked about how Boston just absolutely wrecked the Brooklyn Nets, 149-115. Time Lord looked excellent in that one.
I'm setting you up for an easy layup because one of your boys had a pretty good game yesterday against a bad team.
I got a lot of boys.
He's an Australian, Dave.
Oh, Jumpin' Joe Ingles.
Jumpin' Joe?
Game. Yeah, I mean, look. He hit 6 threes. He looks good out there. He moved the ball. Honestly, I was more impressed with the fact that they played as a team and Mike Conley looked good again. Yeah. Because not trash Mike Conley is the only way this Jazz team can compete and try to make it out of the first round, because they're a different team when he actually gives them something. And this is a team, again, where they're not playing with the full deck. They are missing Bogdanovic, and I really wish that Boyan was able to come to the bubble and compete with this team. But, it's a shame, because I think that if he had been there, our 200 IQ predictions at the beginning of the season were like, this is one of the best starting lineups in basketball. It would be proven right, because everything seems to be clicking for them now. Gobert looks really good. Conley looks good. Mitchell, when he doesn't have to carry the whole load, he's a different player. When he doesn't have the team on his back, he's able to play comfortably, and I really love watching him be more natural instead of being forced to produce. So shout out to the Jazz. Best of luck, and I wish you guys were a full team, but it's the bubble. You just make the best of what you got going out there. And again, some more tears for the Grizzlies, because they can't catch a fucking break. But hey, Grayson Allen, right?
Popping off.
The guy that everybody loves to hate is out there dropping dimes, hitting threes, and looking good out there. He's like trash Tyler Hero. I think that's what
trash Tyler Hero.
Yeah, because he's an older. He's older. He's smarter. He gets way more aggressive on defense. But I think his shooting touch is so hot and cold based on his emotions. What was that?
Trips a couple guys too. Don't forget that.
He is so emotional. He is so emotional, and I want him to just rein it in, because you can tell when he's happy, he's knocking down shots, and it's not even a thought in his head. But when he gets screwed over a tiny bit, gets a no call or somebody pushes him, you see on the way back on defense, the gears are grinding. He's like, I'm gonna fucking smack this guy, and then he comes back and commits a penalty, and you're like, we all saw it coming. Don't act innocent.
So, how we always get the question of what's a dream matchup you'd love to see on the court, like a one-on-one matchup?
Yeah.
Mine for Grayson Allen is vintage Reggie Miller versus Grayson Allen. because Reggie wouldn't even have to play. He would just talk to him, and he would get in Grayson Allen's head.
Grayson Allen would be throwing punches at him in no time. That would no contest.
You thought Reggie got in John Stark's head? Grayson would take it just a step further.
I love Grayson Allen. I want you to succeed in the NBA. He has the talent to. That's the thing that burns me. Is
he's just got to make smart choices.
Basketball.
Yeah.
Get out of your own head. Relax. It's a game.
Yeah.
Like, don't take this all so personally, but he does. He puts that stress on himself.
Yep.
And you watch it go through. And like, by the way, I am gonna have a video that I've already got halfway worked on.
Nice.
It is going to be
is it about
a shout out to kind of like the best of the rest unit of the bubble.
Okay.
I think the name's not locked in, but it's going to be along those lines. Guys who have really impressed me in the bubble, who might not get the notoriety that
this is a shock. This is a shocker to me that I didn't even know. This is like my first reaction that Dave's working on a video I didn't know about.
I know.
Usually I tell you everything that I'm like doing.
Yeah,
but
I just get the script and I show up and I love it. But I've been watching these games.
Oh no, I mean like if I'm like, I'm gonna work on this, I do that because I need to soundboard it off of somebody to A, make sure it's a good idea, and B, to make sure like it.
I'm just calling my shot.
Because with me, what sounds good up here doesn't necessarily sound good when it comes out of the mouth.
That's fair.
If that makes sense. But I will say this, I'll have an announcement then, since you just dropped an announcement about a video. Starting August 24th is when I will have the team fit videos for the NBA draft. So it'll be 30 consecutive weekdays of here's your team fits that we were going to do with the prospect side and then the team fit side. Because the NBA draft is October 16th. It's a Friday. It's a Friday this year. Not Thursday like usual.
I'm so down. I will take that day off.
It's October 16th, Dave. October 16th.
I know it's happening at like 7 o'clock at night, so it doesn't even matter. But I'm going to take the day off so I can get my prep in. Are we going to suit up? Or are we going to go Hawaii 5-0? What's the plan this year?
I don't have a Hawaiian shirt.
I can get you a Hawaiian shirt.
You know what I can do?
We can Tommy Bahama.
You know what I could do, because it would be a throwback to the bubble? I can wear one of my like golf polos, like the coaches wear. The casual, like what the coaches are wearing.
The untucked white polo, you gotta be pop out there?
No.
Polo down to your knees?
Mine would be so I did this is all on the show before I like officially ended, is because of COVID, some of the interviews I had like have to be over Zoom. Yeah. And I was totally that guy where it was like
shirt
and tie up top, basketball shorts down low.
I'm surprised it wasn't boxers.
Where it's like basketball shorts, where it's like I always do that when I'm on like camera and stuff, because if I have to stand up, I don't want it to just be fucking boxers in front of you. Don't want us to get banned on Twitch, Dave. Don't want the Twitch police coming after us. But that'll do it for MVP Sports Live, daily dose of sports knowledge each and every day. I want to thank everyone for watching on Twitch live. We do this every Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. If you miss a show, though, you can watch it on YouTube at MVP Sports. It goes up each and every day after we record. But we're going to take a short break. Games Live coming up next on the Twitch side. But that'll do it for MVP Sports Live. And as always, have a good day, everybody.